Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. We'd like to thank Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from CloudNativeCon KubeCon Berlin. Thanks very much for the support here. We've had a great show. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here at CloudNativeCon KubeCon Berlin. And here with Chris Aniszczyk, who is one of the players in the CNCF world. You work for the Linux Foundation. You play a big part in managing the CNCF and its technical kind of oversight. The TOC is an interesting group inside the CNCF, and it's that group that makes the decisions about what projects to receive, and so they've been pretty busy over the past few months, and the most recent announcement comes with Rocket and Container D.
Yeah, absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah.
You know, two essentially container runtimes, and definitely the two most popular and largest container runtimes coming under CNCF.
Why that balance? Why do you obviously balance makes a lot of sense in a rational world, right?
Yep.
But what is the rationale for two runtimes in the context of this cloud native ecosystem?
What's interesting here is, we initially did not intend kind of both projects coming in necessarily at the same time, but it kind of worked out that way. But if you look at, if you step back and look at it from like end user perspective, it's actually good to have multiple competing, container runtimes, right? Things tend to work better for end users where those runtimes will compete, innovate on stuff, steal ideas from each other, and overall just become better over time, right? We've seen this happen with other technologies, so I think it's overall healthy to kind of have this level of competition. And the great thing about CNCF, we provide a neutral home for for these folks to kind of work together and compete at some level.
How does that affect then other projects that are ongoing? I mean, it doesn't really have any kind of impact on OCI, does it, or does it?
No, I mean, not. There's really, I think, like OCI is orthogonal to CNCF, right? And so the fact that Rocket and Container D already implement the OCI runtime and image spec essentially at some level, or plan to at some level. So for us, it's like, all right, great. Having these projects under a neutral foundation potentially means that they'll last longer. There's more of a there's more confidence that these things will truly be long-term and last in industry. So to me, it's all good. It just like aids the standard over time, in my opinion.
Container D, is interesting to me. I mean, one of the things that I heard people talk about over the past few days, like it offers just enough, right? Just enough for like the Kubernetes community, for example. Yep. And so that would mean, what does it mean though by just enough in this context? What is it about that, the Container D runtime that provides just enough?
Well, at the end of the day, for an orchestration engine like Kubernetes, you need a stable, runtime for containers. You need a stable way to kind of deal with, fetching images and all this stuff. And Container D essentially is refactored out of the original kind of Docker engine bits that just focuses on that specific problem, which is required for an orchestration engine. So it's essentially that. And like part of this is, Docker over the last a little over a year has kind of been going through this exercise of like refactoring things out and modularizing things into smaller pieces. So they had InfraKit that came out, SwarmKit, and they're basically doing these like star kit projects in terms of let's break something apart into just one specific piece and make that modular and see if other people may use it and so on. The Container D is just a evolution of that thing that they've been doing, and I think it's great. It's great for Docker that they're doing this.
And Rocket, RKT.
Yep.
It's a different kind of a container technology, right?
Yeah, it's still a container runtime.
Right.
I mean, they both are very similar in terms of they do similar things. They may have technically different approaches on terms of how they do things, but like to me, this is analogous to like there's an HTTP spec, right? And there's tons of different web servers out there. There's the Apache server, Nginx. They operate at a very different level, but they all they serve HTTP things, and it's great. The competition is great. Both kind of poke jabs at each other, but both get better over time by kind of competing. And this is kind of what we see. This is what, in my opinion, hopefully we'll see with the kind of friendly competition between Rocket and Containerd and OCI kind of serving as the equivalent HTTP spec thing, and so we'll see how things evolve over time.
The competition, between these companies is pretty, is pretty intense. But I'm curious about how, the companies out there that might be thinking about running Containerd, but also Rocket, right? I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, basically OCI is all about guaranteeing that portability. So eventually, when OCI hits 1.0 over the next month or so, we'll basically get to a point where you get, things will be certified, right? So Rocket and Containerd will both certify that they're OCI compliant, and that will mean that you can move your images to any other different runtimes and be good. And so that's all end users want. They don't want to worry about having to rebuild images or things breaking, and that's the whole purpose of OCI and having these container runtimes adhere to the OCI standard.
Does there need to be full compatibility between Containerd and Rocket?
Depends what you mean by full compatibility. There's two specs. There's an image spec and runtime spec, and
do they need to be able to, if you can move one out from the other?
They'll compete on certain things above just running containers and the images. There's a whole notion, things around security, how images are, basically how distribution is handled. There's levels of competition above just the how do I actually lay out a container and how do I execute it? That's really not an area you want to compete. As an end user, you just want to guarantee that your stuff will run properly.
Right.
But on a higher level, in terms of security features and other things, those are areas where people are welcome to kind of compete on.
There was a lot of other things going on at this event too. I mean, we had news from Linkerd, right, and Influent, right?
Yeah.
Give me a summary for people out there of what we heard from the different projects inside the CNCF.
It's actually been crazy because we've had a couple major announcements over the last couple of days. So for me, it's great to have more companies join CNCF. We had Dell really up-level their commitment to become a platinum member. They're very interested, obviously, in storage-related technology and kind of pushing and involving that within the CNCF context. In terms of our projects, Linkerd made an awesome announcement that they now wrote this crazy linker TCP module in Rust, which is great. It's a little bit more performant than kind of some of their existing Scala implementations. Just you don't have to bring up a JVM essentially to take advantage of Linkerd now. So their sidecar model is a little bit lighter weight now. But in general, all the sessions that I've gone to, it's just been great to see things overflowing. I was actually a little bit pissed off that I couldn't get into a gRPC session, and it was literally blocked out. And they've been doing great and evolving, as a project since they've joined CNCF. So
now inside the CNCF we have Linkerd.
Yep.
We have Fluent.
Yep. Fluent.
We have gRPC.
Yep.
We have Rocket.
Yep.
We have Containerd.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
Core DNS.
Yeah. Kubernetes, of course.
Prometheus.
Yeah. Now, what's the whole intention here? Will you just keep building projects, and will they ever work together? Will there ever be a stack that will come out of this?
There will never be a reference stack or distro that you'll download from the CNCF site. We expect our kind of members to build interesting products or solutions using the kind of technology within CNCF. In terms of projects integrating and working together, we don't force projects to do that. It's something that generally happens somewhat naturally. Even at an event like this, we have 1,500 people, a mix of all our projects here, and they naturally kind of look at, oh, this kind of, export format is super useful, out of Prometheus. Maybe we should try to, take that and like, standardize it within how Kubernetes does things. Or gRPC, oh, fantastic, it's great. Containerd, has picked it up and uses it. So like this kind of natural, cooperation, integration happens when you kind of bring people underneath one kind of neutral roof, and I think that's something that the CNCF does in an amazing way.
Now, CICD is a different story, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So help me understand the CICD, discussions that you're having inside the TOC right now.
So from the CNCF aspect, we're trying to figure out, like right now we formed a CI working group basically to figure out what needs do our projects have in terms of first CI things. Like is there solutions currently that they're running their project, is it good enough? Is it something the foundation could kind of up level and provide a better service? Maybe we need a private set of servers that are more optimal than they would get from some cloud service. So we're just having this overall discussion, like figure out like let's go see if we could actually improve the CI status across all of our projects. And then the other thing is like maybe potentially makes sense to do some like cross-project testing, cross-project CI, essentially have projects all build in a similar way to make sure things are compatible. So these are just early things, the CI working group literally formed just like a few weeks ago, so it's
right.
Early days, and it's open to basically anyone who's interested in this.
But we've seen projects come out of CNCF.
Yep.
For specific technologies, right?
Yes.
But CICD, will that follow the same path?
I mean, we haven't actually had a CI/CD project that has been formally proposed to CNCF yet. They haven't presented really anything to the TOC. Really, if I look at the it's hard for me to speak on behalf of the TOC because they are an independent body.
Yeah.
But from the last calls and some of the focus, I think there is a desire to help focus on the networking aspects of cloud native technology. There's kind of let's call it a slew of different networking technologies out there.
Yes.
And we kind of want to bring them under one neutral umbrella and have a better story when it comes to cloud native networking. Storage is another huge thing. It's great that people are starting to run containers and doing stateless services because that's always easier. But all these folks that are really trying to build out stateful services, figuring out storage is an important problem. And right now there's a lot. Just like with networking, there's a lot of different approaches and opinions, and we're trying to basically get people, in the same room together via a working group to come up with potentially a proposal for a project or set of projects to come to the CNCF to help resolve some of these issues.
Well, I see someone approaching here who we're going to be interviewing next, but
Yes.
I want to just thank you, Chris, for taking the time and helping explain things. It's been a great show here in Berlin. 1,500 people. It's triple the size of your event in Seattle.
We're stoked.
And what are you thinking for
Austin? We're probably gonna, we're gonna probably double to what we have here. Like I think our goal is about 2,500, 3,000 people.
Wow.
If we get anything more than that, we'll be super stoked. Given the growth of not only Kubernetes and kind of its dominance in the container orchestration space, CNCF itself has grown to 9 projects, and they have very large respective communities on their own, and we're looking to grow and help them. So hopefully, by December, we may have more projects, and the rest of the projects continue to grow and kind of come under one roof. So we're super stoked.
Well, great. Well, we'll be keeping track. Thanks, Chris, for taking the time to talk with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
We'd like to thank Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from CloudNativeCon KubeCon Berlin.